Hello, so welcome back to this channel, and in today's video we're going to be learning something interesting. In the last video we were able to see how to log into an app using Google, so I'm going to put the link somewhere here in case you've not seen it so that you can go watch the video. But in this particular tutorial we're actually going to be learning how to log into an app using Facebook, and this whole process is made possible with Firebase authentication. So this is probably going to be a long tutorial, but before we get into the real stuff, let's take a couple of minutes and see exactly what we are going to be building and what we are going to have at the end of the day. So as you can see, I have a very simple app on my screen, so we didn't pay any attention to the user interface or how beautiful it's going to look. So we quickly just want to go ahead and click on the continue button, continue with Facebook. So this is actually going to load kind of a Facebook activity that will allow us to log into an app using Facebook. So I don't have any account logged in into this device, so I'm going to go ahead and log in a new account. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and provide my password. Alright, so let's go ahead and click on login. So this will log into Facebook and we're going to continue from there. So as you can see, you previously logged into Ufinix Academy with Facebook. This is because I've actually logged into this app before with this account. So if I click on this button continue, it means that I want to go ahead and log into the app using Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and click on continue. Bam, and we are logged in. Bam. So as you can see, this went ahead to retrieve the display name of this particular user, which is elatechng. And also we're able to fetch the email address and the photo URL. So this is basically how to log into an app using Facebook, but in the end we are going to be making use of Firebase authentication to make everything to work seamlessly. So without wasting much time, let's jump right into it. So I'm going to call this login with Facebook. So this is going to be a blank app. Okay, so our project has been fully loaded. Now the next thing I need to do will be to go ahead and clean this up, because we actually won't be needing it. So let's go ahead and load up our layouts, because we're going to be doing a little bit of design. We need to add the test views and all of that. Alright, so our layout is fully loaded. Now the next thing we need to do will be to change this relative layout to linear layout. Alright, so we're going to set the orientation to vertical. We're going to add some padding. Okay, so what I'm going to do will be to pull up the completed project. So this is what we want to have at the end of the day. But this button that we see here was not actually designed by us. This button is actually contained in the Facebook login SDK. So to be able to have this button added for us, we need to go ahead and install the Facebook login SDK. So the Facebook login SDK is responsible for enabling our app to be able to log in with Facebook. So it takes care of all the bottlenecks that we originally might have faced. So it's more like that's the guy that does all the job. So what we need to do will be to go ahead and install this Nugget package, and after which we can now be able to add this button as well as all of these text views that comes after it. So let's go to our Nugget package manager and install the Facebook login SDK. So here we're going to search for Xamarin Facebook. So this is actually the package that I want to install, the login SDK. So I'm going to go ahead and hit on install. Okay, so it seems we had some error. This is because our support libraries are not updated to the latest version. So we should always look out for this before we start installing new packages. So what I'm going to do will be to go ahead and update these support libraries. First of all, before I will install Xamarin Facebook login SDK. So let's go ahead and update all of this. Okay, so update was successful. Now let's go back and install the login SDK. So this is the library we're interested in, so I'm gonna go ahead and click install. Alright, so I still had the error. It seems that support v4 was not installed. So I think something is broken with the no specs for most of these packages. I'm very certain that Xamarin will have to fix that eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and install support v4. I think that's where the error is coming from. Okay, that's been installed successfully. Alright, so let's go ahead and install this. Now let's return back to our layout design. Alright, so to add the Facebook button, so we're gonna go ahead and say com.facebook. So this is the button we are interested in, the login button. So the layout width is going to be say 280 dp and the height is going to be say 45 dp. Alright, so as you can see, this button doesn't actually respond so well to setting height and weight, right? So we want the height to be more than this. So to achieve that, we're going to go ahead and set some padding. So we're going to set padding top. Let's set this to 30 dp. Okay, I think this is much. So set this to 15 dp, and the padding bottom will be 15 dp as well. So the next thing we need to do will be to set the padding left. So we're going to set this to 30 dp. Alright, so this is basically all that we need to do. And as you can see, our Facebook button is looking really nice. So we're going to set the layer gravity to center. Alright, so that the button will be in the center. Now let's go ahead and define the test views that we're going to be using to display the name, email address, and photo URL. So we are not going to be wasting time with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and type them out. Okay, so now that our layout is ready, the next thing we need to do will be to go into our main activity and reference these views. So here in our main activity, I need to go ahead and define 3 different test views. So this is going to be username test, email test, and photo test. Now the next thing we need to define will be the Facebook login button. So the login button is not a normal button, right? So like we already said, it's coming from the Facebook login SDK. So I'm going to type login button. So what we need to do here will be to import, or will be to resolve this. Alright, so this has been resolved. So we're going to name this Facebook login button. Now the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and reference these views. There's something I think we didn't do. We didn't give this button an ID. So this button requires an ID as well. So we're going to go ahead and assign an ID to it. Login button. So I think this will be okay. Okay, so we're going to copy this. So let's go ahead and reference this view. Okay, so Facebook login button will be equal to, this should be an instance of login button. We're going to have find view by ID resource.id.login button. So we're going to go ahead and reference, so we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for username test, email test, and photo test. So I'm very certain that we're already very used to this process, so I'm going to go ahead and type it out pretty quickly. Okay, so now we successfully reference our views. Alright, so before we start anything and go really deep, there is one more thing that we need to do. We need to go to our NuGet package manager and install Firebase authentication. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to search for Xamarin Firebase. Alright, so let's go ahead and install this. Alright, so this has been successfully installed. Alright, so now that we successfully installed Firebase authentication, the next thing we need to do will be to go to our Firebase console, create a new project, and enable login with Facebook. So let's pull up our browser, and we can actually get to Firebase console by logging on to console.firebase.google.com. So if you have a Google account, that's a Gmail account, definitely you will appear at this page. So why you're seeing all of these plenty boxes is because I've already created some other projects in the past. So we're going to create a new project specifically for this tutorial. So the name of this project is going to be Login with Facebook. Alright, so we're going to disable Google Analytics. So our project is being created. Okay, so our project has been created successfully. So I'm going to go ahead and click on continue. Now the first thing we need to do will be to add an app to this project. So I'm going to go ahead and click on app. Alright, so it's required that we provide our package name. So to do that, we need to go back to Visual Studio and go to our project properties so that we can get our package name. So when we click on manifest, we'll be able to access our package name. Okay, so now our package name is com.ufinix.login with Facebook. So let's return back to Firebase console. I'm going to paste this here. Now the next thing we need to do will be to provide our SHA-1 certificate. In the last tutorial, I provided explanation on how to go about this, but for those of us that haven't seen that video, I want to quickly show us how to do that. So we can simply search on Google, generate debug key store Xamarin. So let's go ahead and search out this, generate debug key store Xamarin. So the first result that we're going to get will give us a heads up on what we need to do. So as you can see, we had a result that said finding key store signature. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link. Alright, the process involves that we run a command, a key2 command, which is this. So all we need to do will be to go ahead and copy this command, and we need to run it in the folder where our key2 is located. We can always find the key2 in the bin folder of our JDK folder. So if you've actually updated your Visual Studio to the latest version and you're working with the latest JDK, then what I have on my system will be exactly what you have on yours too. So I'm going to go to my computer. So I'm going to click into local disk, and in my local disk I'm going to click on program files, and under program files we're going to look for Android and JDK. We're going to open the Microsoft Distributable Open JDK 1.8. So this is the latest version. This is the latest JDK for Android development with Xamarin. So we're going to click on bin. So this is our key2 file. The next thing to do will be to go to this search bar, type in cmd. This will open up a command prompt for us to run our command. Alright, so all we need to do is to paste the command that we copied from the Microsoft documentation, which is this. So we're gonna go ahead and paste the command here. Alright, so as you can see, this has successfully generated our SHA-1 certificate for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. So we're gonna return back to Firebase console. So I'm gonna paste the SHA-1 certificate and click on register app. Now the next thing we need to do will be to download the Google Services JSON, and after that we're gonna click on next, and we are done. So we're gonna continue to console. Now the next thing we need to do will be to enable login with Facebook. So we're gonna go ahead and click on authentication. Alright, the next thing we need to do will be to set up a sign-in method. There is a lot of sign-in methods that we can actually select from. So as you can see, you have email and password authentication, phone number, Google, Play Games, Game Center, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Yahoo, and Microsoft. So we're interested in Facebook right now. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that. So it's actually requesting the app ID and app secret. So to be able to generate app ID and app secret, we need to go ahead and create a new project or a new app on Facebook developers. So to be able to do that, we need to log on to developers.facebook.com. Alright, so you need to log in with your Facebook account. So I have my Facebook account already logged in. So if you aren't, you need to go ahead and log in into your Facebook, and you'll be able to create an app. So I'm gonna go ahead and create an app. So what's gonna be the name of the app? I'm gonna call this Ufinix Facebook app, or Ufinix Facebook login rather. So I think this makes more sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and create an app ID. So it doesn't want me to include Facebook in any of the name. So I'm gonna say Ufinix login app. Of course, I'm not a robot. So just go ahead and answer the security question and click on submit. Okay, so our app has been created. So this is the first thing that we see when we create a Facebook app or a Facebook project. So this is our app ID. We can just go ahead and click here to copy it. So we can now return to Firebase console to make use of the app ID. Now the next thing we need to figure out will be the app secret. Alright, so to get the app secret, we're gonna go to settings. We're gonna go on basic. So this is our app secret. So to display this app secret, we might need to provide our password. So I'm gonna click on show, and I'm gonna provide my password, and this is my app secret. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this, and we're gonna return to Firebase console and paste the app secret. Bam. Alright, now the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and save this app. So we are done with the first part of all that we need to do. we're going to return to our Facebook app and we're going to try to set up Facebook login. Currently, we've not added any of the functionalities to this Facebook app. So when I say Facebook app, it's more like a Facebook project on Facebook developers. So we're going to go to products. Alright, so under products, the product that we're interested in is the Facebook login. Now we're going to go ahead and set up the Facebook login by clicking on setup. So this is very important because without this, we won't be able to log in on Facebook in our Android app. So we need to first of all configure it here on Facebook developers. So the platform that we're interested in currently is the Android platform. So it said we should download the SDK, which we've already done. So we're gonna click on next. So this guy is supposed to walk us through step by step on how to get our Facebook login to work properly. So we've done all of this. So let's click on next. So at this point, we need to provide where we are going to be using the Facebook login. So it's more like the path to this activity. First of all, we have to start with our package name, com.ufinix.login with Facebook.main activity, because this is where we're actually initializing the login with Facebook. So let's confirm that this is correct. Login with Facebook, small letter F. Alright, so this is what we need to provide here. So we're going to go ahead and save this up. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on save. So let's go ahead and use this package name because we are very certain. Alright, so now let's go ahead and continue. Now the next thing we need to do will be to generate an OpenSSL key hash for Facebook. So to be able to do that, I'm going to click on this window. I'm going to click on this link. So it's going to take me where I can download the OpenSSL library. So these are the different SSL libraries that we can use to generate a key hash. But in the past, I've noticed that these particular SSLs or SSLs, yeah, used to actually, have issues later on. So what I do is I go to my browser, search for OpenSSL Windows. So there's another version that I can that I can vouch for, that I've used, that worked really well for me, which is the wiki.openssl.org. So I'm going to click on this link. So the first one, OpenSSL for Windows, is the URL that you're going to click on. So I'm going to click on this URL. It's going to take me where I can download an OpenSSL library. So I'm going to go ahead and download this. So this is the Win64 OpenSSL. So this is the complete version. This is the light version. So I'm going to go ahead and download the complete version because I don't want any issues of any kind. So I'm going to download the ESC. So I already have the OpenSSL installed on my computer. So I'm going to show you what happens here. Alright, so this is OpenSSL. So I can go ahead and run this. So just go ahead and follow through the installation. So this is where you're going to install this. But I've already installed OpenSSL in this location. So after installation, just know that c/program file/OpenSSL Win62. That's where your OpenSSL is located, right? So if I click on next, you just go ahead and follow this through, click on next and all of that. But I've already installed all of this, so I don't need to do it again. So what I need to do now will be to go to my C disk, and I'm going to go to program files and go to OpenSSL. Alright. Now in the bin folder, this is the OpenSSL.exe that is very important to us. So what I'm going to do will be to pull up the Facebook documentation. It's telling us to run this key2 command, but this time around we're going to add the path to OpenSSL. So a very good way of doing this is to copy this path and paste it on a text editor. So what I'm going to do will be to create a new test file on my desktop. This is one way I used to do this so that it's very easy for me to follow through. Alright, so inside of this folder I'm going to create a new test file. So inside of this test file I'm going to go ahead and paste the command I just copied. So what we actually need to do here will be to provide the path to OpenSSL library, right? So to be able to do that, we're going to go to where we have our OpenSSL, which is this. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on this and click on properties. Under properties, I'm going to go ahead and click on security. So under the security, we are going to see the full path to our OpenSSL. So we can easily go ahead and copy this. So inside of the test file, we can now go ahead and replace path to OpenSSL with the path we just copied. So we're gonna paste this here. We're gonna paste this here. Now the next thing we need to do will be to go to our JDK file where we have our key tool. You guys remember when we generated the SHA-1 fingerprint, just the same process that we used. So we're gonna click on Android under JDK, open JDK under bin. So this is where we have our key2.exe. So we're gonna go ahead and click on the search bar and type in CMD. Now the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and paste the command. Bam. So when we paste the command, this is our key hash. So this is what we are interested in. So we're gonna go ahead and copy this. If you use the Google's OpenSSL, you might get something different, but this actually works pretty well without errors. So this is the key hash we are interested in. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. Now we can return to Facebook Developer Console and continue with the setup. Okay, so at this point, we're gonna go ahead and paste the key hash. I'm gonna click on save. So now that I've done that, let's go ahead and click on continue. Click on next. So we need to always be following the instructions given on this documentation step by step. Now it's telling us to open our string.xml and paste this code there. So we're gonna go ahead and copy this code and we're gonna return to our Visual Studio. Alright, so we're gonna go to our resource folder. Under values, we'll see string.xml. So here we're gonna go ahead and paste the code we just copied. Alright, now let's return to Facebook documentation. Now the next thing we need to do will be to enable internet permission on our app. So we can easily do this by opening our project properties. So we can scroll down and find internet. So this is internet. Let's go ahead and tick this. Alright, so this is all we need to do for that. So let's return to the documentation. So it says add the following meta elements: an activity for Facebook and an activity and intent filter for Chrome custom tabs inside your application element. So what we need to do will be to copy this code, and we're going to go into the application tag of our Android manifest file. So to find our manifest file, we're going to go to Solution Explorer. So under Solution Explorer, we're going to go to Properties, and this is our manifest file. So it's now saying inside the application tag. So this is the application element or tag. So we're going to go ahead and make it a container. So all we need to do here will be to paste the code you just copied from Facebook Developer Console. Bam. So we're going to go ahead and save this up. Now let's return to the developer's documentation and continue the process. So we've done all of this. The next thing we need to do will be to click on next. Okay, so this is the point that we'll add the login button. We've already done this. So this is the point that we'll now register the callbacks and start deciding what we want to fetch. So now let's go ahead and complete the setup of Facebook login in our app. So we're going to return to Visual Studio in our main activity. Alright, now the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and say Facebook login button.set read permissions. So this is the point where we can now decide the information that we want to get from the user's profile. So what happens here is that when the user clicks on the login button, there are some information that we want to be able to retrieve at the end of the day. So we're gonna put them in a new list. So let's go ahead and resolve this. So this is going to be a new list of string. So the things we are interested in is the public profile, and we are also interested in the email address, which is just email. Alright, so we successfully set the read permissions. So the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and register a callback manager. So if you go to the documentation, you can see where it is here. Now create a callback manager to handle login responses by calling callbackmanager.factory.create. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're gonna do will be to go ahead and define an interface of iCallbackManager. So I'm gonna say iCallbackManager. So let's go ahead and resolve this. So we're gonna have iCallbackManager. So I'm gonna call this callback manager. So let's go ahead and reference this callback manager here. So I'm gonna say callback manager will be equal to callback manager factory, just the way the Facebook documentation advised. So we have to do everything just the way we are asked to do it. So the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and register the callback to Facebook login button. So I'm gonna say Facebook login button dot register callback. So we're gonna pass this our callback manager. So this is an interface, right? So you can see interface of iFacebook callback. We're gonna pass this. So passing this means that we are going to implement this interface in this activity. On the top of the activity, I'm going to go ahead and implement this interface. So it is going to be iFacebook callback. So let's go ahead and implement the interface. Boom. So as you can see, this is responsible for notifying us when the login was successful. That's why we have the onSuccess interface. And this is responsible when the login had an error. And this is to notify us when we cancel the login procedure. So now that we have all of this, so I don't think this is well arranged. So I'm going to copy this and move it down a little bit. So this is how it should be. Now the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and initialize our Firebase. So in the last class we went over how to instantiate or initialize Firebase authentication, but we're going to go over it once more. If you're already familiar with this process, I really advise that you skip this part of the tutorial so that you can really get started on the things that are really important to you. Like I already mentioned now, most of the time making use of the Google services.json doesn't actually initialize Firebase. We are left with no choice than to find a very reliable way of initializing Firebase, which is what we are going to be using in this tutorial. So what we need to do will be to declare a new method. This method will go ahead and instantiate Firebase authentication. Alright, so this is going to be a method that will return an instance of Firebase authentication. So we're going to say var. So this is going to be equal to Firebase app. So we're going to initialize this. Okay, on a normal day with our Google services.json file, this was supposed to go ahead and initialize an app, but most of the time this is not usually the case. So what we need to do will be to go ahead and use an if statement to verify whether the Firebase was well initialized or not. So before that, we need to create a new instance of Firebase auth. So I'm going to call this mauth. So here I'm going to say if app is equal to null. So we are checking if Firebase was well initialized or not. So if Firebase wasn't well initialized, we're going to go ahead and declare a new Firebase option. Alright, so we're going to be adding a couple of items to be able to set up our Firebase option. So the first thing we need to do will be to set up our project ID. So where are we going to get the project ID from? We're going to get it from the Google services.json file that we downloaded earlier on. So I'm going to open this up. So this is where we are going to be getting all the values to properly set up our Firebase. So the project ID is what we see here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, log in with Facebook. So we're going to go ahead and paste this here. So the next thing we need to set will be the application ID, which is exactly the same thing as the project ID. After that, we need to provide the API key. So we're going to have set API key. We're going to have set API key. So we need to go ahead and copy that also from the JSON file. So this is the current key. That's the API key. So we're going to copy this. The next thing we need to set will be the database URL. So this is the database URL. The Firebase URL is the same thing as database URL. Now the next thing we need to do will be to set the storage bucket. So this is the storage bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And bam, we're done with the Firebase option. Lastly, we need to go ahead and build it. Alright, so now that we have our Firebase options fully set up, so the next thing we need to do will be to make use of these options to initialize Firebase on our application. So I'm going to say app will be equal to Firebase app dot initialize. So this time around, we're going to pass it our context, and we're going to pass it Firebase options, which is options in this case. Alright, and finally we're going to go ahead and say mauth. This will be equal to Firebase auth dot instance. Alright, so successfully instantiated our Firebase application, and in the end we now have an instance of Firebase auth. So we're going to add an else statement. So if peradventure app is not null from the beginning, it means that we don't need to do any of this. We just need to go ahead and set mauth to be equal to Firebase auth dot instance. So now that we are done with all of this, we're going to finally go ahead and return an instance of mauth. Okay, so we have our Firebase now ready. So we're going to go ahead and have a global declaration of Firebase authentication. So we're going to call this FireAuth. So we're going to call this Firebase auth. Alright, so this will be the global instance that we can access anywhere. So Firebase auth will be equal to get Firebase auth. Bam. So we are done with setting up Firebase authentication. But now that we successfully registered the callback manager, the next thing we need to do will be to override on activity result. Because what happens is that when the user clicks on a button, the login button, it will inflate the Facebook activity that will allow the user to log in using Facebook. And when the activity returns, we need to kind of have an override to check the results, whether the login was successful or not. So all we need to do will be to go ahead and override on activity results. So I'm going to say override on activity results. So here I'm going to go ahead and say callback manager on activity results. So here we're going to pass it the request code. We're going to pass it the result code. Before, we need to convert it to an integer variable, and we're going to pass it the data. So this is basically all that we need to do. The callback manager will now decide whether the login was cancelled, errored out, or successful. Okay, so all we just need to do will be to go ahead and write what we want to happen when the login was successful, or when the login failed, or when the login was cancelled. So the first thing we want to do will be to come to this point when login was successful. What we want to do here first of all will be to get the login result. So we're going to say login result. So let's go ahead and resolve this. So login results. So this is going to be equal to results as login results. Alright. Now the next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and say, okay, so now that we have a login result, since this is on success, we are very certain that the login was successful. The next thing we need to do will be to go ahead and try to get the credentials for this particular user. So I'm going to say var credentials. This should be equal to Facebook auth provider dot get credentials. So where are we going to get these credentials from? We're going to get it from login result dot access token dot token. Boom. So here we're going to now say Firebase auth dot sign in with credentials, and we're going to go ahead and pass it the credentials. Okay, I think I made a mistake here. So now to ensure that the Firebase part of things was successful, we can go ahead and add on success listener, and also go ahead and add on failure listener. So now the next thing we need to do will be to scroll up so that we can implement this interface. In this activity, we need to implement the eye on success listener. Okay, look at it here, the eye on success listeners. So we're going to scroll up. So here we're going to implement eye on success listener, and also we can implement eye on failure listener. Okay, so now that we successfully implemented this interface, so as you can see, we have this method on success which already serves the Facebook callback interface, right? So what this means is that two interfaces are going to be sharing this same method. This is not so cool. So what we're going to be doing will be to make use of a Boolean variable to separate these two things, right? So before we get to that point, I'm going to go ahead and clean this out. So the task ahead will be to find a way to ensure that when this onSuccess method is required by the Facebook callback, it's going to execute successfully. And also when we want to use it to execute the onSuccess coming from Firebase, it will also execute successfully. So to be able to do this, we're going to use a Boolean variable. So here I'm going to say using Firebase. So I'm going to set this to true. So this doesn't exist, so let's go ahead and create it. So another way of doing this is to implement the success listener, the Facebook success listener, in a separate class. Then this wouldn't be an issue at all. So if I set that to true, what I'm going to do will now be to go ahead and say if using Firebase. So if I'm not using Firebase, so if using Firebase is not true, then it should go ahead and do all of this. The reason is because we need to first of all get to this point before we can now start using Firebase. So what I'm going to do will be to now say else. So in this else statement, this is where we're going to write the commands that we want to execute when we want Firebase to make use of the onSuccess method for the onSuccess listener interface. So what I'm going to do will now be to go ahead and say, I know this is quite a very long tutorial, but it actually helps. It actually helps. In the end, we'll be able to see everything work. So at this point, we are not using Firebase. So we're going to say using Firebase to false. So now to complete all of this, the next thing I need to do will be to go ahead and start retrieving the values that are important to us. So the email test is going to be equal to Firebase auth.currentuser.email. So this will give us the email of the current user. So to grab the photo URL, so we're going to say Firebase auth.currentuser.photo URL. So this will get us the photo URL of this particular user. So we're going to have Firebase auth.currentuser.displayName. So what I'm going to do will be to add some stuffs here to be able to explain what the values are all about. Alright, so this is basically all that we need to do to get our users to be able to sign in using Facebook on our app. So to be very certain and verify that all of this works, what I'm going to do will be to go ahead and run this app. So we're going to go ahead and run this on our emulator to verify that everything works. So at this point, our Facebook project or our Facebook app is still in development mode. So as you can see, status is in development, and this means that it's only few accounts that can actually test it, which are just the developers. So if you want to use an account other than yours, you need to first of all add them as administrators or as developers. So if I add you as developer, you will be able to log in into this app. But if you're not a developer and you're not an administrator or a tester, you won't be able to log into the app. So just for us to be aware that it's only certain accounts that can log in into our Facebook app or our Android app using Facebook at this particular point. So let's go ahead and run this on our emulator. Okay, so now we have an app. Let's go ahead and click on continue with Facebook. So we have the inflate successfully. So as you can see, log into your Facebook account to connect to Ufinix login app, which is the name of our Facebook app. So here I'm going to go ahead and provide my login details. So I'm going to have to ensure that I don't make a mistake at this point. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on login. Boom, and login was successful. So it's now telling me that Ufinix login app will receive your name, your profile picture, and email address, which is exactly what we defined in our login callback. So let's go ahead and click on continue as Uchenna. So this is me logging into Ufinix login app. And bam, I'm successfully logged in, and boom. So this is my display name, Uchenna Nodim, and this is my email address, macbruno1@yahoo.com, and this is my photo URL. So this is how to go about logging into your app with Facebook, accompanied with Firebase authentication. So with Firebase authentication, we can now carry the user instance anywhere around in our app. So anywhere we now call the firebase.signup method, our user will be signed up out of our application. So I know that this has been an incredibly long tutorial, but I hope you learned a lot from it. If you have and you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button, and if this is your first time for coming around this channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification so that you always get notified whenever I make this kind of video. And hey, I have something exciting. If you have any difficulty or any problem you might want me to look into, go into the comment section and drop me a tutorial request. So I'll try as much as possible to go over the comments and make the videos as fast as I can. Thank you very much for watching, and I really love you. Peace out.